Well, hello everyone. Today we're going to be talking about how to deal with a difficult teenager. Now, when we talk about a difficult teenager, you're probably thinking in terms of, a teenager that fights all the time, let's say, or maybe they act disrespectful or they won't listen when you ask them to do something. Those are all different actions that a teen might take that would fall into this being difficult category. Well, today we're going to share a shift in perspective that may just turn this completely around for you, and then also a few different strategies that you can put into place to help turn that difficult teenager into someone that's a pleasure to be around. So let's get started. Well, hello again, everyone. My name is Jim White, and I'm an author, coach, and the founder of the Family Enrichment Academy. And today we're going to be talking about how to deal with your difficult teenager. But before we jump in there, I just wanted to say thank you. Actually, thank you on behalf of your teenager for your commitment to want to be a better parent and a better person as well. And also would like to welcome you to our community of parents. We're a group of parents just like you who are committed to being better and really taking a stand for the power that love can have within our family. In effect, we're heroes for our family and taking that stand. And actually, as a way to welcome you, I have a free resource for you. And what I have are 10 questions you should never ask your teenager. Think of these as conversation killers. They're the ones that shut them down. And I also have 10 great questions. These are the conversation starters. You can use these questions to help get your teenager to open up a little bit more and, just engage a little bit more. So anyway, free resource. There's be a link below you can click on and you can download that for review later on. So anyway, back to our discussion around your difficult teenager. So today we're going to talk about a couple of different things. First of all, we're going to take a look at how a shift in perspective can really help turn this around and maybe shift and give you a different approach with your teenager. And then secondly, we're going to look at a couple of other strategies that you can put into play to help change or transform your teenager from being difficult to being just an absolute joy to be around. So let's dive in. Now, one of the themes that we have here at the Family Enrichment Academy is that a change in perspective changes everything. And the perspective I want to have you look at today is around control versus compassion. So a lot of times when we're dealing with a difficult teenager, the first instinct or response by the parent is to try to control what's going on. In other words, control the behavior, sort of make the teen act differently. But if you think about that, while that teenager may act differently in the short term, you don't really address or deal with the root cause of the bad behavior in the first place. And if you remember also, one of our other thoughts here is that any bad or unwanted behavior is really just a sign or a signal that your teen needs to connect or that they're struggling a little bit. So if we look at it from that perspective, we maybe can shift to this idea of compassion around what the teen might be going through. What's the underlying root cause of the unwanted or difficult behavior, if you will. So let's just think for a few minutes about some stuff that might be going on in your teenager's life. Maybe they're feeling a little overwhelmed at school. There's a lot going on from a class standpoint, or they're feeling stressed a little bit about their grades or an upcoming test. Maybe there's some issues within the friend group that you aren't aware of that they're worried about or concerned about. Maybe they're just, their desire to be independent. Teenagers want to break away a little bit, but with that, they also feel a little fearful that they're not quite ready for that. And again, your teen may not be able to put into words what they're going through, but my point is that they probably are experiencing some difficulty in one of these areas or something like this that's creating a negative energy. They're becoming fearful, if you will, and that negative energy has to come out and get expressed somehow, and it typically comes out as bad behavior. And so again, rather than just trying to control that and trying to push back that bad behavior, I'm inviting you to shift the perspective to one of more of compassion. It's like, oh, there's something going on here. This is just a signal of an underlying issue that teenager might be dealing with that we need to work to address to help them through, if you will. And as you help them through that, the bad behavior will just magically go away. So that's the shift in perspective. It's not trying to control, but have some compassion and say, okay, how can I help and support the team? And the other thing we talk a lot about is empower the teenager to get through whatever that difficulty is. So that's the first thing I'd throw out is let's take a look at maybe shifting that perspective a little bit. And that puts you in a different place and changes how you might respond to that teenager being difficult. You're going to be coming from compassion and looking for ways to connect, first of all, so maybe you can uncover what's really going on or help the teen to uncover what's really going on for them and be able to express it. And then also then move to empowerment to help them work through something that maybe that they're struggling with. So it all starts though with your perspective, and that's part of your growth as a parent is being able to shift that perspective to one of compassion when maybe you feel like you want to try to fight back a little bit and try to control what's going on. So that's step one. See if you can make that shift. Now let's talk about how you might build connection and move to empowerment as a way to help your teen get through something difficult that they're struggling with. So let's start with some ideas around building connection with your teen and the opportunity that this difficult behavior creates for building connection. And where I would suggest you might start is with a little bit of vulnerability. And what I mean by that is to share some of your own experience with being in a difficult place and having a situation where maybe you didn't act appropriately or you were difficult. And with that, share your goal for the teenager. And you can open the conversation with something like this. You could say, you know, I've noticed some difficult behavior, or some unwanted or some challenging behavior, whatever that is, and acknowledge that. You could say something like, you know, I'm not so much concerned about what you did, I'm more concerned about you. And you see that shift there? It's not about the behavior, it's about them, and you express a concern for them. And you say that usually what you have found is that when somebody acts in a unwanted way or an inappropriate way, it's typically because something's going on for them where they're struggling with something. And so again, shift that concern to them and then share your goal. Tell them, you know, my goal in supporting you is I want you to experience some joy and some happiness and be in a good place and feel like you're not alone. That's another big thing for that teenager is to connect with them and say, I don't want you to feel like you're alone in dealing with something. I'm here to support and help you because again, I want you to feel happy. I want you to feel at peace. I want you to feel joyful. I want you to feel on purpose. You know, set that sort of like casting a vision, if you will. You're still letting them know that that's what your objective is. And again, you can see how you're shifting away from that bad behavior to them and how you're there in support of them. So that sets the stage, and then you can be again a little bit vulnerable and share an example of maybe some time when you were struggling with something, let's say at work, for example, and it was you were preoccupied with it, and maybe you acted inappropriately towards a friend or a family member as a result of that pent-up frustration, if you will. And so again, that's a way to be vulnerable and to communicate to the teen that it's not uncommon to have something like that happen. And again, shift that focus then back. How can I help you or support you? Just having that conversation will help to build some connection. And then I think another thing that you need to do is to acknowledge the fact that the teenager may not even be sure what is causing them to experience that frustration or that angst, if you will. I mean, you could ask them, you could say, what's going on? Is there a difficulty with school, difficulty with a friend group? And to be quite honest, half the time the teen may say, no, it's nothing, I don't really know. And it's not, I'll just share with you, it may not be that they know and they won't tell you, they in fact don't know. And again, that's part of their journey. They're growing and learning and becoming, sort of developing into a mature person as well. And they may not be able to put into words or be able to clearly identify what it is that's really bothering them. And so I think it's helpful if you can acknowledge that and say, you know what? You may not know for sure, and that's fine. Let's let it process a little bit. Think about what could be causing this. And again, position yourself as there in support of them, of accomplishing that goal of finding some peace, some joy, and some purpose in their life. So that's the first step in this, and that'll help build connection and help your teenager to feel safe, if you will. They'll start to feel like you're a safe place where they can come and help to unravel some of that stuff that's going on for them. And again, the goal is to help them to dissipate that negative energy. So the next step as you build that connection then is, okay, how do you move to more of a coaching role or empowerment if you want to uncover what the issue might be? What are some steps you can take there to help them move through whatever difficulty they're dealing with? So anyway, hopefully that moves that forward a little bit. So now let's talk a little bit about empowerment and how that might fit into this whole scenario. So we've built some connection with your teenager, and through that connection and your expression of compassion, you've been able to get them to open up a little bit, and actually they've been able, let's say they've been able to identify what the kind of the core issue, what's causing them the stress and the difficulty at the time. And let's just say, for example, let's say they're taking an algebra class that they're really struggling with in school, and in fact maybe they currently have a failing grade, and it's just, it's overwhelming to them, and they're really struggling with it, but they're able to acknowledge and share that with you. So now the question is, where do you go from here? And what I would do is I want you to take two different approaches to this. And again, this is a perspective shift maybe for you. This is both a short-term, you have both short-term and a long-term goal. Short-term, you want to help them work through the algebra class and maybe getting in a better place and be able to move that forward. But along with that, I want you to think about your teenager's journey and where they're growing and learning so that they can become an effective adult. And part of that is developing life skills, if you will, learning to be resourceful, learning to manage their emotions. These are other really valuable lessons that they can learn along the way getting through one of these scenarios or circumstances. So it's not just about learning the algebra, it's how do I manage emotions? How can I be resourceful in getting help? How can I learn about, how do I learn better, or how can I study better? Those kinds of things, which will help them throughout the rest of their life. So I want you to take both approaches, if you will, or think of this from both perspectives. And then you dive in from a coaching standpoint. It's a matter of, first of all, acknowledging and validating what they're going through. And we talk about those coaching skills of acknowledging and validating. And then next you use those open-ended questions, reframing questions like, how else could you look at this? Or what could you do different next time? But again, remember, your goal is not to solve the problem for the teenager. You're there to ask those questions to help prompt them through the process of solving it or resolving the issue for themselves. Again, that's where they're developing those skills to be resourceful and starting to develop belief in themselves and their ability to solve these problems. So again, use those open-ended questions to help guide them along the way. And again, don't forget about the emotional intelligence components or managing their emotions. If let's say they're taking a test and they get anxious or they stress out, ask them questions. How else could you approach it? What could you do to help relax yourself in those moments? Prompt them a little bit and let them think through, and then check back with them and see how it went. And remind them that it's a journey for them too, and you're there to help and support them as they grow and learn to develop these skills. So again, shift into that coaching mode, use those coaching skills that we talk about. And remember to shift out. It's not your job to fix the problem. Your job is to be there and support and empower them to be their absolute best and let them help to solve and come up with solutions for these issues. So anyway, that's just a little bit on empowerment. Think that through. And again, remember, this is all connected to that teen being difficult. Back to that difficult teen, what's the underlying issue, build connection, and then see if you can work to empower them. So that's the process that we're talking about here. So anyway, hopefully you found some value in that and in that thought process as we went through that. And I just want to remind you again that I do have that resource for you. It's those 10 questions you should never ask your teenager, the conversation killers. And then I have those 10 great questions as well, those conversation starters. And there's a link below. You can click on that, download that free resource, and then you'll be connected to our community as well. And remember, we're here on this journey just like you are. We're all trying to move forward and be the absolute best versions of ourselves as parents and as people. And so that's a good way to connect, and hopefully you can find other content that you might find valuable as well. So again, thank you so much for stopping in, checking out this video, and again, your commitment to being a better parent. And as we sign off, I just want to remind you, one of the themes from our video today, that a change in perspective changes everything.